Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing really well. Today I'm going to be chatting about some makeup products that are currently on the chopping block. So these are products that I am seriously considering decluttering, eliminating from my collection, passing on to someone, or potentially throwing in the trash depending on the age or performance of the product. These are all things that I have set aside over the last few weeks and have been playing around with in some capacity, but I really want to spend the next month, maybe month and a half, prioritizing them, really familiarizing myself with them and deciding whether or not there's something I want to bring into the new year with me. So these are primarily older products, primarily products that I don't really feel like are performing as well as they may have used to or are suiting my needs anymore. And I kind of just want to chat through them and share with you my thoughts on them at this moment. And maybe you have some suggestions on how I could get better use out of them, ways that I could reach for them, or let me know if you think that they're not worth keeping in my collection anymore. I am wearing all of these products that I'm going to be talking about today in one way or another, and I did film the application, so I will be sharing with you what they look like, how they perform, and all that jazz as B-roll. So let's just hop right on into it. The first product I have and want to share with you is one that you may already be familiar with that I am considering decluttering because I talked about it in my Pan Those Eyeshadows finale. It is the Fenty Galaxy palette. This is a palette that I've had since October of 2017. It is very old and it definitely does look very well loved. However, even though I've had it for 5 years, it doesn't look as loved as I probably would hope and dream that it could be at this point, but that's because when I brought this into my life, it was like my height of makeup purchasing. But in any case, it does look really well used. And through using it in my most recent round of my Pan Those eyeshadows, I have noticed a decrease in the performance of this. I've noticed that the shadows feel much more dry. They do have a lot more fallout and they don't have quite as much color payoff, as much pigmentation as previously. So I really want to continue putting this to the test, play with these shadows in more of a wide range than I would when I'm using it in my Pan Those eyeshadows. Now that I've wrapped up that project, I can kind of play around with some of these underutilized shades like this blue here, this one right here. Some of these colors I just haven't used in any major capacity, and I want to remedy that, see if there are any shades that I really love. Maybe I want to depot them, or I just want to hold on to this palette and really continue to use it in the coming years. I don't really know how I feel about this one at this moment. I don't know if I'm going to end up with it or not. Today I am wearing, just on the inner portion of my lower lash line, I'm wearing this gorgeous kind of aqua blue shade here. This is called Cosmic Ocean. And I noticed it didn't have very much pigmentation, not very much color payoff at all. It took a lot of building to get it to this point today, and it's not even super pigmented. Versus I put this shade right here, Meteor Crush, on the inner portion of my upper lid, and it had really great payoff. It's really reflective, and I didn't notice any fallout either. So I'm gonna play around and refamiliarize myself with this palette in the coming month and a half or so. Another palette that is on the chopping block is one that I also brought into my collection in 2017. This is the Modern Renaissance palette. Yeah, it's very old. It's approaching 6 years at this point because I brought it in the very early parts of 2017. And it definitely looks very well loved. I don't find myself gravitating towards this palette anymore because I do have these shades many times over in other palettes. After this kind of came to the forefront, this was a really, really popular palette at the time. So many other brands came out with similar kind of color stories where it's like that warm neutral. And so I find myself not gravitating towards this. I find myself wanting to use newer palettes, different formulas. But I applied this today. I'm wearing the shades Burnt Orange, Antique Bronze, and Love Letter all on my eye look today in some capacity. And I love the way that they all performed. So the only reason why this is on the chopping block is because I overlook it all the time. And given its age, I may want to just kind of prioritize newer things while they're at their peak of performance, while they're in their best condition. I may just want to prioritize using some newer eyeshadow palettes, things that are 1, 2, 3 years old versus like something like this that is like 6 years old and possibly on the brink of it changing its texture. I don't know. I've kind of recently had this shift in my mentality where I've noticed I'm using so many old makeup products when I'm panning, but then I'm letting the newer things kind of go bad. And even in the last couple of years, I haven't actually purchased that much, but the products that I have purchased, they don't really look that used or loved because I'm using the things that are like 5, 6 years old. And I don't know, maybe I want to kind of switch that up. Maybe I want to purge some of these older products that have just been sitting around and use the newer things while they're in their prime. That is just a kind of a mentality shift that I'm kind of going through right now. I'm not necessarily implementing it in its full capacity, but it's something that I've been considering. And so is this something that I want to hold on to and keep using over the eyeshadow palettes that are a year or 2 years old when they're in their prime? I'm not sure, but I'm gonna keep playing with this. I actually really enjoyed the performance of it today. Another eyeshadow, this one is just a single. This is from Colourpop. This is the shade Birthday Cake in the Super Shock Shadow formula. This is very old, and more likely than not, this is something that I will end up decluttering because it is so old and I have noticed a big change in its performance. Super Shock shadows are pretty notorious for not having the longest shelf life, and this came from the Colourpop 3rd birthday collection, which was a long time ago, probably 5 years old as well. This is an ultra glitter formula, and when it was at its peak, when it was at its freshest, newest state, it was phenomenal. I loved the texture that this had on the lids. Super, super chunky glitter in the best way possible. And it has this kind of bronzy, rose gold, warm, kind of textured glitter with textured with silver glitter. It's a really dimensional shade, and I used to really, really love this. I have hit pan on it, and you can tell I've used it quite a lot, but in the last few months when I've reached for this, I have noticed that it has a lot of fallout. It feels very dry, but I am going to try to revive it. I'm going to add some oil to it and kind of see if it brings it back to life, if it's something that continues to perform well after reviving it. And I kind of want to determine if this is something that I want to reach for over some of those newer eyeshadows in my collection as well, just as I said with the Modern Renaissance palette, because this is long discontinued. It was limited edition. This is something that I've had forever and ever, and while it does look loved, I just have so many eyeshadows that I don't know if I want to prioritize this ever in any kind of capacity, or if this is something that I might just reach for once in a while and it might just go bad given its age. On the very opposite end of the spectrum, I have this Colourpop and Hocus Pocus mascara. This is the BFF mascara in the shade Butcherson. I might just use this for the next month and then call it an empty, even though I only had it open for 3 weeks at this point, under a month for sure. It is, in theory, a really cool mascara. It has this gorgeous kind of plummy, burgundy sort of tone to it. It is what I'm wearing on my lashes today, and I think that it looks good. Like, it has nice impact, but it is basically functioning like it's expired at this point already, which is just wild because it hasn't even been open a month. It is very dry. It takes a lot of energy to build it up. It requires a lot of maintenance as well. It's very flaky. I actually, before filming, I had to wipe some of the fallout off of my under eyes, and that's just wild to me. It's just acting like it's already an expired product. So I'm gonna try to just use it as much as possible in the coming month, but I've only used it maybe 4 or 5 times so far, and I've already noticed a huge shift in the performance. It's quickly dwindling. This is more likely than not going to be considered an empty by the end of this series. Like, when I come back to share with you my thoughts on these products, it'll just be an empty. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of mention it now because I was thinking about just decluttering it, but I actually think that I want to use it as much as I possibly can before it is completely unusable, and it's on the verge already of that. For the majority of last year and this year, I was pretty much on a foundation no-buy, and one of the foundations that has been in my collection that I've been wanting to get more use out of but have always been overlooking is this NYX Born to Glow Naturally Radiant Foundation. I have mine in the shade Warm Vanilla, and I always look over this because in the last couple of years, I just prefer tinted moisturizers. I like something that's very lightweight, very skin-like. And every time I reach into this, I just feel like this looks a little too heavy, a little too cakey, a little too makeup-y for my preferences. So today I applied it with a sponge on this half of my face, just full-on coverage on this side. And then on this side, I applied it mixed with my Too Faced Hangover Primer, this moisturizing primer here. And I like the way that it looks more with the Too Faced, but it still looks too makeup-y, too high coverage for me and my preferences these days. So I want to continue to put it to the test and see if it's something I want to hold on to. I just find that now when I wear things that are more high coverage, especially things that are like this, pretty much anything that's not a tinted moisturizer, basically. If I wear them, I feel like they settle into the lines of my forehead, around my eyes, around my smile lines. I just don't like the way that this settles on my face. So I want to keep testing it with different moisturizers underneath of it, different primers maybe mixed with it, and see if I can use it and enjoy it in the way that I prefer base products to be these days. I used to really like this. Back in maybe like 2019, I think is when I got it. I did prefer more high coverage, but my preference has just shifted so much. And while this isn't a full coverage foundation, I would consider it to be a medium coverage. And it just can look too makeup-y, just for my personal preferences. Next up is this Stila Stay All Day Waterproof Brow Color. I have had this in my life for like a year and a half and I've never liked it. I've never liked it at all. I did swatch it earlier, but I'll show you. It just has absolutely no pigmentation and it requires a lot of like pressure in order to get that pigmentation. And I do already have quite full brows. I do have, you know, quite a bit of definition to them, but I like to use a brow product to create a little bit more of an even look to my brows, a little bit more fullness, and to define them just a little bit more where I am lacking some hairs, especially on this brow. This one is a struggle for me. And this never gives me the brow look that I want. It never gives me the result that I'm after. I'm gonna play with this and see if there's ways that I like this, but generally this just is underwhelming for me. It doesn't offer any pigmentation, any sort of results that I'm after. The amount of effort that I have to put into it. I create like these hair-like strokes. I really push down, try to put down a lot of pressure, and the result is basically nothing in my opinion. I don't feel like I see that drastic of a difference to my brows, but I don't know, I'm gonna play with it. I have tried this as a freckle pen and I just found that it's so hard to work with because you do have to push down so hard that it picks up anything that you have underneath of it. Overall, it's just a dud in my opinion, and for my preferences. This is in the shade medium and it's just so light, it just doesn't really do anything for me and my needs. If you have like lighter brows and fair skin, maybe it would work for you and that would be something more suited to you and your needs. But for me, I just was expecting more from it. And then I have a highlighter here. This is the Merit Highlighting Balm in the shade Bounce. This is such a pretty product. I have it on today on the tops of my cheekbones and I love the way that this reflects the light. I really, really enjoy the texture of this as well. While it goes on quite creamy, it actually sets sort of down, like it doesn't completely dry down and it doesn't become powdery. It has like a malleable kind of texture to it still, but it doesn't make your hair stick to it. It doesn't feel like greasy on the face. And so everything about it is a plus. It's a really beautiful product, but there's a big but. I've had this about a year and a half now, approaching 2 years, and it smells weird. It kind of smells like almonds or like a nut of some sort, and it did not have that smell before. This is something that I've noticed with not only this Merit product, but also with my tinted lip oil from them as well. I've noticed a change in the scent, but the performance hasn't changed from my experience so far. But I'm gonna really put it to the test. I wanna play with it, maybe under foundations, maybe mixed with foundations, maybe on bare skin, and just see if my skin reacts to it, if I start noticing a more drastic change in the scent. I just honestly feel like this might be on the verge of expiration at this point, and so I want to use it and enjoy it until that ends up being the case and determine whether or not I think that that is also the case, if that makes any sense. And then another colored cheek product I have here is very old. I've had this for many years, probably again that 4 to 5 year point. This is the Flower Beauty Blush Bombs in the shade Nectar. This is the oldest liquid blush that I have in my collection. This is one of the first liquid blushes that I ever purchased, and it's what I'm wearing today, as are all the other products that I'm talking about. This tone I'm just not sure of anymore. It's too peachy. This shade Nectar, I don't know, I feel like I used to really enjoy it. Perhaps this is a product that is better suited to me when I have more of a tan, but right now I think it looks good on camera. I think it looks good from a distance, but when I first apply it, I just feel like it looks very stark, and I end up overlooking this and not really reaching into this lately because it just isn't the type of tone that I like these days. I really like something that has more pink and more brown to it. Possibly I can mix this with some other blushes from my collection and create like a blush cocktail, and maybe I would really like it that way. I just really want to bring it to the forefront, put it to the test, play with it. I know I really like this actually as an under eye corrector, so I'm gonna try using it that way. And I don't have any color correctors in my collection right now, so it actually would be very suitable to use it in that way. But if I don't like this over other liquid blushes in my collection, and I'm not finding myself wanting to use it as a liquid blush, it might be something that I end up passing on. Passing on? I might end up throwing it in the trash, to be honest, because it's so old. I'm really not sure. I'm gonna give myself a month to play with it and get to know it. And then lastly, the last thing that is currently on my chopping block is this right here. This is a liquid lipstick from Quo Beauty. This is the Velvet Kiss liquid lipstick in the shade Soft Linen. It's what I have on my lips today. I just don't prefer liquid lipsticks anymore. I think this looks okay. I think it looks all right. I feel like the packaging is more browny versus when it's applied to my lips, it does pull as more pinky mauve. And it's not the kind of tone that I personally like on myself. I do like something that, again, similar to the blush, is a little bit more on the brown side, something that feels more neutral versus this feels very bright and pink for my preferences. And not only is the shade and the type of product not my preference, I've noticed this has changed in terms of its texture as well. Liquid lipsticks just don't have the shelf life that bullet lipsticks or lip glosses do have, and this has dried up pretty significantly compared to when I first brought it into my collection. I believe that was in 2020. This product I have not used very much of, but it feels like there's a lot of air in here now. It feels like there's a lot of space, and I think that's just the product has seriously like shrunk. It's just less product and less moisture in here. Actually, it feels very comfortable on the lips for a liquid lipstick. It actually holds up very well, but I just never find myself reaching for it. I have just overlooked it in comparison to other lip products in my collection over the last few years. And so we're gonna try it. We're gonna see if it's something that I can reach for maybe as a liquid blush. Maybe I would like to use it in tandem with like a lip gloss on top of it. I don't know. I'm gonna play with it. I'm gonna see. But these are all products that, you know, they're not my favorites in my collection. They're not things that I find myself reaching for, gravitating towards. And I kind of need an outlet like this to make myself use them. So that's probably the first sign that maybe it is time to part ways with them. I'll come back in a month's time and let you know what made the cut. So that is everything. Thank you so much for watching and for hanging out with me. Let me know actually down in the comments. Is there anything that you're considering removing from your collection, decluttering before the end of this year? Let me know. That's everything. I'll see you in the next one. Bye everyone.